When we started, we definitely started with a bunch of different ideas that ranged in how AI could be used. The first thing we really did was time box research because we weren't sure, we didn't know what we didn't know. So we kind of took a bet that the change in the worlds that were happening on the model front was going to unlock new opportunities. And really, this is really risky for a startup. We have really limited resources. We have an existing roadmap. It's a really big strategic call to say we're going to do research into this area because it might be a sunk cost. But I guess the key here is we had that conviction and we made the call. The biggest input into that was Karthik's technical research about how confident are we that these new inputs or these new models that offer the ability to take these inputs is going to actually produce a viable result.
Welcome to Season 2 of Building with AI, the show where we engage in conversations with world-class AI product builders and leaders. We help uncover tactical insights to help you build and scale better AI products. I'm your host, Haroon Choudery, and today we're joined by Phil Vander Broek, the co-founder and CPO of Dopt, a product adoption platform designed for modern teams. Also joining us is Karthik Sethuraman, Dopt's incredible staff engineer who will share valuable insights into the platform's GenAI adoption. In this episode, Phil and Karthik discuss the initial focus on developing a traditional SaaS platform. They also share how they identified the opportunity to leverage AI for in-product education and onboarding. Motivated by the belief that AI will transform the way software is constructed and used, they launched AI Assist earlier this month. They also discuss guiding principles for AI-powered UX, the significant technical challenges in developing AI Assist, their key learnings from building AI products, and much more. But before we dig in, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Autoblocks, the AI optimization platform product teams use to create world-class AI experiences. So, you just launched V0 of your AI feature or product. What's next? Autoblocks unlocks an intuitive yet powerful optimization workflow that helps you continuously understand, improve, differentiate your AI-powered products. Understand how your users interact with your product by connecting user activity to what's happening under the hood of your application. Improve your product thoughtfully and iteratively. Integrate testing of your AI products into your CI workflow and run A/B tests to see what changes are driving great user outcomes. Differentiate your AI products with powerful fine-tuning workflow that lets you turn product usage data into training data. Get started with Autoblocks for free at autoblocks.ai. Now, back to the episode.
All right, Phil and Karthik, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. For folks who aren't familiar with Dopt, do you mind giving a quick background on what the company does and also just a quick background on yourselves as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll kick it off. So Dopt is a platform that helps you build better self-serve product-led experiences. That includes things like in-product onboarding, in-product education, in-product announcements, and most recently, AI assistance. We give you drop-in React components and flexible SDKs that help you build these types of experiences super seamlessly into your product. And one of the things that we're really excited about with the entire platform, but specifically the AI features, is that we give you some best practice components to get started easily, but we also give you flexible SDKs. So really, depending on your product and your user, you can build the best type of assistance or onboarding for them.
Amazing. And just a quick background on what the both of you do would be great as well.
Oh, yeah, I'll start too. So I'm Phil, co-founder and CPO, and before starting Dopt, I was head of growth design at Dropbox. So while I was there, I was helping the team work on the product-led growth experiences, everything from acquisition, activation, retention, and a lot of that work helped kind of bring inspiration into building Dopt.
I'm Karthik. I'm an engineer at Dopt, I guess very early engineer. I think right now our engineering team is like 3 people. And I've been at Dopt for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then before that, I was at Twitter for several years where I was doing engineering management and also working on a lot of the core growth stuff, just like Phil, but from the engineering side. So I managed a couple of different teams, which were all for user acquisition and user activation at Twitter.
Great. Yeah, no, and this has been a really exciting week for the Dopt team. You guys released AI Assist, and I'll let you talk about what AI Assist is. But what I'm curious to know, Phil, is beginning from the beginning of Dopt and when you founded the company to the release of AI Assist, walk me through that journey. When did you discover the power of generative AI? Like, was it right around the ChatGPT moment? And then how did those conversations turn into how do we build this technology into the product to unlock certain capabilities and workflows? I'm curious to just learn about the story and the progression of that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting for us. We started Dopt and we really focused more on building kind of core tools and platforms to help people build user onboarding experiences. And that was things like different types of onboarding components like checklists or tours or embedded tips. And then also our backend platform that enables personalization and targeting, including all the SDKs, APIs that enable people to build those experiences in. So for us, that platform was not powered by AI or didn't use AI because our core users' job to be done really demanded just more like a traditional SaaS platform. And we had been following along with AI as the technology continued to advance over the many years. And we had been exploring other products in the market to see how they were approaching that. And obviously the biggest change in the world at first was from a B2B SaaS perspective, which is obviously our world, was the rise of chatbots. And as chatbots continued to, and especially in support tools, and as those became more popular and the quality of those conversations started to increase, including just the quality of the models in general. I mean, we're all kind of casual ChatGPT users, unrelated to the Dopt features. As the quality started to increase, we started to take a harder look about what opportunities there might be applied to the world of in-product onboarding education. And that was the impetus. How far has the technology come for us to think that there might be a real opportunity where we could help people more easily use products with AI? And the moment for us when we really engaged in this for real started late last year, probably around November, where we felt like we had more confidence that the technology had come far enough that we could that there was going to be a big opportunity. And as we're saying, we were pretty bought into the idea that AI assistive experiences will really change the way that software is both built and used by end users. And obviously our domain is all about determining what a great, exceptional end user experience is. And our frame of reference was how might we give our users tools to build amazing end user experiences that make their products easier to use. So obviously we're in the metagame, and yeah, so if it's useful, I'm happy to talk through that journey starting in November through like December and January, February, now into March as we went live.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in digging into that. But first, I'm curious, Karthik, from your perspective, what was your reaction to seeing these new tools and libraries become available that essentially allow you to interact with LLMs in a code base? What was your general reaction right around the time that some of these APIs became available for use?
That's a great question. I'd say we have a great partnership across product and engineering. And I've actually been working with AI statistical models for a while. Well, I studied statistics in college, and my first job out of college, I was working at Palantir 10 years ago on like massive data set summarization. And I hadn't been working very actively in AI for a while, but I've been following along, just like Phil mentioned. And when we decided that it was an interesting time to start exploring whether we could build these AI-assisted experiences, I think the breakthroughs, from my perspective, were really a lot of the multimodal experiences, the ones that can combine what users are seeing in their apps with things like HTML and code, and also like documents and prompt and retrieval. And the flexible APIs that were available last year have only there's been like a huge momentum around like building applications with images, code, documents. So we started with GPT-4, Vision, and then, Gemini Pro 1.5 came out, and recently Cloud 3 has come out with multimodal support. So I think all of those were game changers in terms of the ability to understand user interfaces, user documents all together, and not have to do like separate processing for one, for another, and things like that. So that was like probably one of the big game changers for us, which I think made us very convinced that we could build something valuable. And the other big game changer for us was also the rise of, I would say, a lot of smaller open source models, which we fine-tuned and deployed mostly for things like retrieval, image understanding when you take a screenshot of a page, what page are you looking at, so we can give you better results and action. So I think both of those, there was sort of like a watershed moment last year, continuing into this year, which got us really excited to see what we could build with it.
That's really interesting that the developments around having accessibility to these multimodal models was really the watershed moment for Dopt. Why do you think it was multimodal models specifically, rather than just the pure LLMs that really unlock those use cases for a company like Dopt? And I'm curious to hear from both of your perspectives.
I think this is one of the things Karthik said earlier that I couldn't agree with more, is that the partnership between product and engineering for AI Assist at Dopt was really great. And this is part of our story that I love, because for us, when we were looking at the opportunity to provide value for our users, we really wanted to understand if we could provide excellent AI-powered education in product. It was really important for us that the AI assistant would be aware of the users and the product's context, because we felt like that's the only way the assistance is actually going to be valuable. And we also felt like a lot of the existing tools on the market that are typically chatbots, they're really kind of disconnected from the product experience. They're really more based on either customer support or maybe like customer success. And they're definitely trained on docs, but they don't have any notion about what's happening in the product or the interface or the user experience. And so our main how might we was, how do we provide exceptional AI-powered assistance that's really truly built for in-product? And I would say that we did two main areas of research, because this is very much, we felt like, unexplored, or maybe we didn't see a lot of great tools on the market. The two areas of research was, one, like product and design. What does that even mean from an end user experience? Okay, cool, everybody's building chatbots, but that leaves so much opportunity on the table to provide great experiences that are built seamlessly into interfaces. So that's the design and product question. And then the other one, given that is kind of our, let's call it our scope or our how might we, now you can imagine why Karthik started to investigate multimodal models, because we wanted to see if we could take some of the unique in-product context as inputs, like the image or other types of in-product context.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like Dopt is a trailblazer in this regard, because we haven't seen a lot of well-executed products that have leveraged the, I guess, like multimodal context in order to provide these end user experiences. But you guys seem to have nailed it. We've been using it Autoblocks in full transparency, and it's been incredible for our users. Now, what are some of the technical challenges, Karthik, that you've had to work through in order to make something like this work in a way that's magical to the end user?
Yeah, I think following up a little bit with what Phil said, the multimodal stuff was magical in a sense that we were able to gain direct context into what users were seeing and what they were interacting with. And there's a lot of like research literature published in like 2022 and 2023 talking about how when you can give these super powerful vision models access to what people are actually looking at, you can build great agents. And there's a lot of companies trying to build general purpose agents out there like Dopt AI. But I think we were trying to solve like a very specific use case, which is in the browser, what are people looking at? And, like with Autoblocks already knows what Autoblocks customers are doing. And you guys have docs about them and you know what actions they can take. So how could we sort of feed all that into a model that can be successful? On the technical side, I'd say the biggest challenges with multimodality that we had to solve were really around effective, let's say, screenshot or image generation. And then also understanding some of the HTML and like semantic context that backs up that. So you kind of want to be able to take fast screenshots of people's pages. So we modified a bunch of existing libraries to make it in the browser fast so that when an Autoblocks customer, for example, asks for help on something, we can generate a screenshot really quickly, on the order of like hundreds of milliseconds. The other thing we wrote a lot of was around like trying to understand what exactly is the user interacting with. They're interacting with a button that has a specific click handler. They're interacting with a table. They're interacting with a slider that has a label. So I think being able to quickly and accurately retrieve both of those makes the multimodal model extremely powerful.
And how do you sort of arrive at that conclusion that all of that context is really what you need in order to make something like this work? Because it seems like you took on a big challenge. Obviously, the reward is very high when you execute well on the challenge, but most people are just starting off with simple chatbots, right? Just to at least get something out the door, say that they're doing some AI stuff. But you guys played this on hard mode. I would say you've done quite well as well. And so just what was the process behind scoping AI Assist and how you actually wanted to approach the project and the varying complexity of the different approaches you could have taken?
Yeah, I'll start from a product perspective and then Karthik can talk a little bit more. But when we started, we definitely started with a bunch of different ideas that ranged in how AI could be used. And from even like a product perspective, ranging from things like being able to automatically generate in-product tours to providing in-app assistance. The first thing we really did was time-boxed research because we weren't sure, we didn't know what we didn't know. So we kind of took a bet that the change in the worlds that were happening on the model front was going to unlock new opportunities, particularly for in-product. And really, this is really risky for a startup. We have really limited resources. We have an existing roadmap. It's a really big strategic call to say we're going to do research into this area because it might be a sunk cost. But I guess the key here is we had that conviction and we made the call. The biggest input into that was Karthik's technical research about how confident are we that these new inputs or these new models that offer the ability to take these inputs is going to actually produce a viable result. And Karthik, I'll let you talk about what that research looked like.
So, just like with everybody else, I think like Phil mentioned, we started by evaluating chatbots. We're like, okay, well, how quickly can we build a chatbot? We built one very quickly. And we were able to get it as performant as all the other chatbots that exist with docs and so on. And then I think around that same time last fall, we began getting access to a lot of the multimodal models. So we started with GPT-4 Vision, then we got access to Gemini Pro. And there was a lot of research literature that was coming out last year about like, how can we make autonomous web agents, right? Like, how could we make a little app that can go do something for you? There's like this thing that came out called Rabbit, right? Which is like that little tool which you can like, book flights on or whatever. So there's been a lot of research about this. So I was very interested. I was like, if people can do all that and we try to restrict ourselves to a very specific domain of like helping people with, SaaS applications and other web apps, we should be able to do really well. So it's really sort of like research and cutting edge, like product inspired. And then we were like, let's see how we can apply that to building better in product tooling for folks. Like personally, I'm still not convinced that the general purpose, do anything you want by having like a little multimodal web app is going to work. But I think when you constrain it, you put it in the hands of folks who've written documentation, who've created well thought out products, and who just want to teach their users like how to interact with those products, it becomes a lot more feasible. So that's sort of what our exploration looked like.
Yeah, and actually, I kind of want to talk about what it was almost like from how that research was a huge input on the like product side, because In many ways, over our course of probably about 3 months of building AI Assist, I just feel like we went through kind of cascading moments of trying to increase our confidence that this thing was going to work. Starting with like pretty low confidence and more like foundational research, where Karthik was looking at different models that were available. And I'll give you an example of like maybe the first step. The first step was building a super simple chatbot. Karthik did that in days. We knew that was super possible. I can't quite remember how long it took, but maybe let's call it a couple of weeks later. I remember when Karthik shared with me a screenshot. He had taken a screenshot of, I think it was Google Cloud Platform's admin, and passed it into a vision model and with some other context. And it spit back some pretty primitive responses, but really promising. And I think that was a moment for me. It was like, oh, these models are potentially game changers for understanding in-product context that we might be able to use in a broader pipeline to really deliver good assistance. It was basically things like, hey, you're on a dashboard. On the left, there's navigation. You're looking at a chart. The chart probably represents this thing. It was really, again, primitive, but remarkable. So that was kind of our first threshold. And now like our confidence dial is getting dialed up a little bit more. Okay, this is worth investing even more time into. After that, we got a little bit more specific about Dopt, and I wrote up a couple of key Dopt use cases, or use cases where this could be useful within our own product, because it was easy for us to take product context right from our own product. Like we could take a screenshot from Dopt. And okay, let's say we were going to build AI Assist for Dopt. Where would users find this helpful? One could think like maybe a user wants to learn more about our environment switcher. You can have multiple environments development and production. Sometimes that's a little confusing. What if users could use AI Assist to better understand that concept? Okay, that's a key use case. Let's try to prototype what an AI response might be if it could understand that interface element, the broader Dopt context, and look at some of our documentation to return a result. And so now this kind of like more applied use case helps our confidence ratchet up a little bit. And I think in many ways, it was almost like these gating decisions, like, do we feel like from our most recent research, which takes real build time, that's what's so hard about building AI products, that the build time, the engineering is an input into both discovery and definition. And Karthik would go and do some really great work, come back and help us understand that, hey, because of what I built, I now have higher confidence that like we should keep building down this path. And I think that's kind of like a good framework for what building AI Assist felt like for us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned the discovery aspect of building AI-powered products and how so much of the assumptions that you can make with a traditional product in the design phase don't necessarily apply with an AI product, because you can't necessarily have a perfect understanding of how that AI product is going to behave in production, right? There's a lot of variables involved in shaping the user experience that it might create, because the pros of the power of an AI-powered product is that it can personalize, but that's also part of what makes it so difficult to work with, is how do you make sure that all of the personalizations that it does are accurate and trustworthy? So what were some of the challenges that you faced, Phil, on the product side, dealing with that, I'll call it increased ambiguity of how effective a certain design or scope was actually going to be in reality?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. It's really easy to have great AI powered ideas, but contrary to like typical product development, where oftentimes PM and design will de-risk typical non-AI products, like when you're done with like discovery and definition, you often have pretty good idea that it's going to work. With AI products, it's different because you actually have to build parts of the AI pipeline to determine if the response is even going to be good. So part of that discovery and definition process is actually building, and you're just building to increase your confidence, because you never have like 100% confidence it's going to work, just the non-deterministic nature of AI. So for us, we had a couple kind of guiding principles. We didn't think chatbots can be useful for things like if you want to ask questions about a Wikipedia page, and a chatbot might be really great. It's a good modality. But in terms of SaaS, like application, it's not tied into the interface experience at all, and feels clunky. So our experience and product guideline was kind of like, how might we build experiences that are seamlessly, natively integrated into experience? That's both from a modality and from a quality of response perspective. Those were the high level guiding principles. This would be things like, how might you be able to provide an automatic natural language assistance if somebody hits an error? Like, that's literally in the error message, not like a chat thing, right? Part of the experience. Great idea. Does it work? Okay. That would be amazing if it did work. Customer value is going to be there. How might we start to ratchet up our confidence? We need to start building. And I think that we kind of get into that whole idea of like, you need to build to increase confidence. And it feels riskier than traditional product development. But if you feel like the ROI is there, meaning that customer value is going to be so much bigger that you can invest in that risk, then it's worth taking from a product bet perspective. In many ways, and like I was saying before, as head of growth design at Dropbox, we had a portfolio of bets. There's probabilities. Some are riskier, some are higher reward. It felt really similar to that in the sense that you are thinking across different ideas about what might work. You do research, you have to build to increase your confidence, and then you can determine how to move forward.
That resonates a lot. And Karthik, I'm curious on the technical side, what was the biggest challenge of all of this? And I'm particularly curious about combining all of the context. So you mentioned these multimodal models are excellent at being able to extract information from things like screenshots of a web page. But then combining it seems like an entirely different and maybe even more difficult challenge altogether than any individual part of this entire system. So I'm curious, was that the most difficult part of the development process, was combining the context, or was it something else?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say we were able to get pretty far, especially using some of the more powerful models like, GPT-4 and now like Cloud 3. We've been playing around with Opus. I think all the, what I would call cutting edge state-of-the-art models are generally pretty good at what I would call like tier 1 support of both understanding web apps, understanding HTML, and following general directions. For us, the hardest part was figuring out how to take all this context and also fetch the relevant documents so that the assistance could be grounded in your own app. So like where we started, like Phil mentioned, we did a bunch of exploration and we're like, okay, yeah, the model understands you're interacting with a input where you can put in SQL, right? But oftentimes a lot of the help that you need, and Phil can talk a lot more about this, should be grounded in like concept. What are you actually trying to achieve? Then you can elevate the support into like an even greater level of support, right? And provide follow-up actions for folks. And most of that is grounded in actual product documentation. Documentation, blog posts, was on your website, things like that. So making sure that we could retrieve and inject the most important documentation, that was a very big challenge for us. So we actually had to do that using a lot of custom modeling because there's not really great, I would say, multimodal retrieval out there. There's a lot of embeddings for like text, which we use. We use Cohere for embedding our text and doing like simple retrieval. But for a lot more complex contextual retrieval, here's a screenshot and here's the button the user is interacting with, fetch like 10 documents that could be related to this button. We had to build a lot of custom stuff ourselves and deploy it ourselves and train it ourselves and validate it ourselves. And that was actually probably one of the biggest sort of technical hurdles from a product perspective, which Phil sort of highlighted, which is like, okay, we have this sort of tiny Google demo, or we have this demo in Dopt where we put in the documents that we know should go with this question. But for any arbitrary website or any arbitrary example, can we pull the right documents so that the explanations that are created by the model are useful? And that was a big challenge because we had to both build a bunch of examples out, which we did beyond just Dopt. And then we also had to build a full retrieval system that could work with images, that could work with code, that could work with combinations of things, and we had to tune it. And I'd say that was really the biggest challenge from a technical perspective. Yeah.
Building an AI product is normally much more experimental and empirical compared to traditional product development. What are some of the interesting learnings that the both of you took away from the team dynamic and the development process and the interaction between product and engineering and design when working on an AI-powered product versus other products that you've worked on that weren't AI-powered?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. I think, like I was saying before, I think the biggest change for me from a team dynamic perspective is that building and being a cross-functional team across engineering, design, and product is an important part at the beginning part of the process. It has to be a cross-functional team. You have to prototype or build as input into discovery and definition. And that's a pretty big change from typical product development that can sometimes feel a little bit like a pipeline across discovery, define, design done, or engineering done. It's like, you can't be design done and then bring in engineering to develop the design done feature. It doesn't work. That's not the way you have confidence in a successful product. And I think one thing that worked really well for us is that there was certainly a lot of engineering research done up front that helped us build confidence, like what Karthik was talking about. When we had enough confidence, probably somewhere around we got that results back from that Google Cloud image and it knew kind of what the image interface showed, we did start to do quite a bit of design exploration about how to be able to provide assistance into a product super seamlessly. And we've got a really great technical designer on our team, Alex, who built out a lot of cool prototypes using some open source projects. And we determined that there were some cool opportunities about giving users the ability to point at anything in a product and have it get explained. You could kind of say, I want it to learn more about this interface element. And it would be like, hey, this is a foundational part of the product. Based on the docs, here's an answer. That's kind of one design or user experience evolution. That's pretty novel. Other ones would be like the error use case I talked about. That's a really important user experience consideration that was born out of a cross-functional process. The last one would be almost like a help hub, but interface and context aware. So those were the type of design iterations that happened and coincided with the kind of technical part.
Got it.
Well, Karthik, I'm just really, really curious to hear, from your point of view.
Yeah, I'd say Phil covered a lot of how we iterated at the beginning when we were more in the prototype stage. And I think that's common for any probabilistic system, right? Like Phil mentioned, like at Twitter and Dropbox, we spent a lot of time doing experimentation-driven product building, which is also sort of very probabilistic, right? You're like, I'm going to try out 5 different variants, and then depending on which one succeeds, we'll change our roadmap, and we have tons and tons of bets. So it was very similar to that. But I'd say even after we got to a good internal milestone and we had, a bunch of folks who were partnering with us try it out, you guys at Autoblocks and our partners at Conductor, we still kept iterating on design based on, one of the biggest things we iterated on very recently was the order in which we would do document retrieval and then answers and then follow up. We iterate on how quickly we could get streaming responses back and sort of quality trade-offs versus speed. We recently launched a follow-up question component, and we've also been iterating on that. What does that experience look like, and how do we trade off quality and speed? So there's all these levers where you have to sort of make a collaborative decision, and it's very trial and error based. It's usually I deploy for our retrieval stuff, I deploy some custom models onto some infrastructure, and then I give Phil a secret link, and I'm like, Phil, go here and try this out, and Phil tries it out for an hour. We get maybe 100 responses, which is enough to sort of statistically know if there's a significant improvement or a significant regression. And then oftentimes is sort of like just with like experimentation. On some metrics, things get better, and on some metrics, things get worse. And we have to make a decision about, okay, we're going to take this even though certain types of responses are worse, or interacting with certain elements gets worse, or we're not as good at returning relevant documents. So yeah, that's what the process has been like. It's been very experimentation driven, although right now it's all internal and sort of manual experimentation.
I'm curious, like, how do you imagine the process of experimenting and iterating is going to be now that you have a lot more customer feedback to inform the results and outcomes from the AI Assist?
Yeah, great question. I've got two from my point of view, and then Karthik, I'm curious to hear from you. But one of the key things, and one part of the system that is talked about often is like prompting, and that's a big area of experimentation for us. And you have a system prompt, and then like more like an assistant level prompt. The system prompt is the prompt that all assistants are based off of, and then you can have an assistant level, like I am a helpful assistant for Autoblocks. Okay, cool. This one knows to be Autoblocks. And iterating on those is still going to be, an area where we can continue to learn how to best change those and determine what the impact is. And I think the other thing is once we start to get real results, of course, we can start to look at those results and do analysis of those results for some definition of quality to feed that back into the top of the how might we improve this process.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. At least from what I've seen, it continues to be a very experimental process, an iterative process, even in production. And so there's definitely a lot of analogies there. I'm curious, what are you most excited about for the future of AI Assist and the opportunities that lay in front of it, and also other similar tools and this technologies backing them?
Yeah, so one of the coolest things about AI Assist, in my opinion, is that we built an SDK and API layer that is basically at its core ability to look at a product and understand its context and deliver relevant results. That's like a really amazing innovation. So now we get to ask a cool question about like, what's the best way to deliver that value to different customers? Right now, we have a couple of pre-built components built on top of that platform. We have like Ask Anything. We have a couple other things. Basically, we're going to continue to build different specific solutions that customers can plug and play. We're going to build something that enables you to have a help center that can basically have relevant resources based on in-product context. We're going to have some better kind of chat abilities. We're going to have stuff that can embed these types of modalities right into the interface, like that error use case I was talking about. And the cool thing is we get to continue to, now that kind of core platform is built, it will be much easier for us to continue to deliver value on that experience layer, which is awesome. And then on the kind of AI platform level, we've talked a lot about building in the ability for AI to understand how to take action. And again, once you enable that on the more like SDK API layer, you can imagine all the different types of amazing experiences you can build on top of that. I think that's one of the things I'm most excited about our approach. Again, it's not just another chatbot. This is a real AI assisted platform that's going to have this cool technical platform layer along with like plug and play experiences on top of it. So again, that's like true to our ethos of building tools and having tools that are flexible and able to be built in seamlessly. So I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity to continue to like build on top of that vision.
Absolutely.
I think as Phil mentioned, I'm super excited about the ability to expand kinds of results we can return and the ability for users to take next steps with those results, follow up in their user journey with those results, and really create a layer which goes beyond just answers and questions and documentation. So I think that's like on our immediate roadmap, and we're doing a lot of discovery there, both from a technical perspective and from a product perspective. And then I'd say the other thing I'm super excited about is, as Phil mentioned, how we can create different modalities around these experiences. And I think a lot of that's truly like design and product driven.
So the Dopt team just released AI Assist earlier this week. Phil, do you mind describing what AI Assist is?
Yeah, definitely. So AI Assist Basically, we give you tools to build AI-powered assistants directly into your product. And the way it works is it automatically crawls your docs or any other sort of product content. It can be like your help articles, maybe you have guides, maybe you have some developer documentation, and it creates a model based on those. And then we use AI to understand your users in product context. So that could be things like literally using AI to understand the elements on the screen, looking at some of the HTML or other technical parts of the product to understand the in-product context, and combining both of those to deliver super personalized and contextual assistance that helps your users succeed in using your product. And I think the thing we're most excited about is it's not another chatbot. It's not something that's disconnected from the overall user experience. It's built seamlessly into the product. And we have kind of two parts. We have this kind of this kind of platform, this SDK API layer. And then on top of it, we have drop-in React components that can help you get started super seamlessly. So some of the experiences we're starting with are things like the ability to let your users point at anything in your product and get relevant help. So they could point at a particular navigation item and it will deliver an explanation about what it is. And if they want, they can ask a follow-up question. Another thing is proactive error assistance. So you could automatically help any user whenever they see an error, or contextual help hub is another experience. So that surfaces relevant docs based on where the user is. So as a user is navigating or moving around the particular product, the help hub would update based on that context. And since we offer SDKs, you can build any type of assistance in to your product. And so whatever is best for your users or your product.
Well, first of all, kudos to the both of you and the entire Dopt team for building what is, in my opinion, one of the coolest applications of generative AI that I've ever seen. It's definitely difficult nowadays to wow people. It's a moving target. What impresses people? People are just used to very impressive things nowadays. But I would say that AI Assist definitely has that wow factor. You guys have totally nailed it. And I'm super excited for folks to check it out. We'll include links to AI Assist, Dopt, and any other references from this interview in the show notes. And to close off, one of the things I'd like to ask our guests is, what is your hottest take that relates to generative AI that most people would disagree with, but you would die on a hill for? Karthik, do you want to start first?
Yeah, I have a lot of hot takes with respect to generative AI, but I think the hottest take I have is that the generative AI we have right now is super useful and it can build really interesting applications, but it's not really general intelligence. And I think if you're going to be building an application, you have to be very aware of what it can do and what it can't do.
Wise words. Phil, what would you say is your hottest take about generative AI?
Well, what's so funny about my hottest take, especially with like a product design thinker, is that it's not really a hot take, but I'm just surprised that people don't take action on it, which is that a chatbot is not the best generative AI format. There are so many more opportunities. Everyone says that. I just want to see more people build different types of generative AI experiences that are for different use cases. Maybe they're built for different products. Maybe just something that really leverages generative AI to help people succeed in different ways other than a chatbot. They have their place in the world. They're cool. I use them all the time, but there's just so much more opportunity.
Love it. That's a great place to end. Thank you both for taking the time and looking forward to sharing this with our audience.
Yeah, thanks so much for letting us tell a story. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.